I bet you are all wondering what my next move is going to be after realizing that the team may have just dedicated a song that sums up my personality perfectly. You guys want to play a game? Want to see a card trick? Okay, are you ready? I want you to pick a card, any card. Okay, so this one? This one? Yep. Okay, don't tell me. Let me guess. It's a 2. Y'all, today the planets have perfectly aligned for Teams tips. Well, I guess it's really more tech tips now, but Teams tips at 2, on 2, 22. If you didn't already know, today's a really special day, and not just because of training, but because the world aligned just to make this happen for Teams tips. We're so excited that you've joined us today and that you're able to participate in this session. We host these regularly through the Office of Information Technology as a way to get you information and equip you with the tools that you really need to have. Today's session is going to focus on your data, right? We all have a lot of data. We need to be able to categorize that data, synchronize that data, store it, and share it. And today's advanced forms is going to cover just all of those features to better serve you. I'm Amanda Pritchard. I'm the Microsoft 365 specialist. I get to test and troubleshoot the magic that makes Microsoft happen on campus. And I'm joined today with Brian Sherwood, who's the manager of Help Desk. He's going to be talking a little bit at the latter end of today's session on Power Automate. So we're going to cover a lot of information today and go over a lot of great details all about advanced forms. If you haven't already watched our previous session on just how to use forms, we have that stored on YouTube, so you can watch that video. We're going to post that in our moderated chat, so you'll be able to watch that. Today's session is not going to cover the details of creating the questions and forms and creating those individual forms. We're really going to look at having the assumption that you have an understanding of Microsoft Forms, and we're going to go through the sections within Forms to help you automate and synchronize those communications with your team. Okay, so I'm going to go to my next slide here. I wanted to let you all know we are preparing for our upcoming IT forum. It's on a Thursday. I know, not a Tuesday, a Thursday in March. And it's a morning session, and it's where all of OIT representatives from across the department here are providing campus with updates on any upgrades, any new specials, any collaborations with other teams. I know we've got an update that some work that we've helped with the Office of Accessibility, the International Student Services offices, and then the Information Security Office is going to give an update too on how we are winning the cyber war on campus, how to make sure your systems are protected and safe. So we are ready. We have an awesome agenda, some incredible speakers coming out. The only thing that's missing is you. If you haven't already registered, we have a QR code on the slide, and we are going to post that in the chat as well. So we're going to go ahead and dive into today's content. I'm going to stop sharing this screen, and then I'm going to pull up a different screen to share with you all so that we can start getting into our forms. Okay, perfect. I've got it pulled up. I'm going to look and see if there's any feedback. I'm going to leave it a little bit smaller for right now because we're going over some generalized content, so you're not going to need to be able to read every word on my screen. If this is too small, please go ahead and send a message in the chat, and we can increase the size of that, so that's not a problem. Okay, so if you want to follow along, I would say follow along the beginning portion of this by going to office.com. Go ahead and log in, get your credentials, your Duo authentication set up so that you can participate by kind of scanning and seeing a little bit about the ways that your forms are set up. I will say the latter half of the session on Power Automate, I do not recommend trying to follow along then. We do not have it structured for that because our Power Automate and Flow are so unique to what your business needs are, you may want to just watch and then be able to rewatch the session at a later time. Okay, so log on to office.com. We're going to go over a couple of these advanced features in Forms. So if you're on office.com, you should be able to go ahead and toggle to Forms, and it's going to open up for me here and kind of refresh. So one clarification that I want to make, and this is something if you use Forms a lot, you may have noticed this, but there's a couple different ways that you can create it and a couple of different ways in which your data is stored. If you were making a personal form, if I just logged into my account here and created a new form, okay, by selecting new form, that's going to be a personal form. It's not necessarily linked to anything other than me. So I have an example here that you can see. It has my name. This is a great way to just glance at your forms and identify who is the owner and who has access. So by looking at these, you can see a couple that are under just my name and then a couple that are under some team names. I want to encourage you, if you don't already have them under a team, it may be worth going ahead and looking at doing that. And we are going to cover how to do that in just a second here. So scrolling down, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this part just because I feel like this part at the bottom is a little hard. When I scroll down, I'm able to see my groups. Anything that's in a group means it's shared with that entire group in that team. So these are just a few of the teams. It's pulling up the teams that I interact with the most. These are a few of the teams that I'm on in Teams and where those forms are shared. So you can see at a glance, the marketing one has about 83 forms. When I share it with my team, that automatically puts any of those results that we get in Excel, it puts those in the cloud for us. So instead of going to those results and having to download them, they're all right there. So I can click on my group and see in a group, these are all the ones that I've been able to share with my team. I'm going to go ahead and go back here and just show the one that, for an example, one that I don't have. If I need to move it anywhere so that more people can access it, if you may have had a couple of personal forms that you were prepping and getting ready, consider moving it to the team and Teams. And this is a great benefit too, as we all do, people move about the session or move about your career. You might move on and you want other people to still have access to that information, have access to that data. So this is a great way to be sure that you're sharing that with the entire group. So all I did is I selected those three dots, selected move, and then you're able to select which team you may want to share that on. I'll just go ahead and throw it into the main group that I manage in OIT, which is our marketing and communications. So I've gone ahead and moved that there. So now when we see the name, it's now shared with the entire group. Highly, highly recommend you doing this. It's going to ensure that all of your data is on the cloud. It's going to ensure that everyone has access to that information. Okay, so now you can see, we should be able to see down here that it's part of our group in Teams, and now it suddenly appears. And you don't have the option to move it again once it's already in that individual group. So that's how you can see where these are stored, where all of the backend data will go. I want to talk about really quick the shared with me as well. So in forms, you see these three columns. The shared with me would be forms that these are examples that my students have created. It might be something that I've requested and they've shared it directly with me using that share link in forms. So once it's shared with me, I can have access to it. But just like I just showed, the whole team doesn't necessarily have access. So this is great for those forms that you're testing, for ones that maybe it's just a two-way communication with a few people or very few specific people and you don't want to share it with your whole team. But these are examples that you can see who created. These are my amazing student workers. If you don't know them, Meg's Light is working behind the scenes here running the show, and Seisha is also helping with the chat. So if you have questions, Seisha's going to make sure that you're taken care of there. But these are some forms that they created. So you can see that these were shared just directly with me. The rest of my team, though, is not going to be able to see these. So when you create that, it's really important for the person who created that form to be able to share that with the whole team if you're expecting everybody to get access to that. Pinned is another option. If you don't use this, you might be a bit of a fan of this, because if you saw the amount of forms that I have, I don't even want to count. I don't know if it tallies, but thousands, at least, at minimum, thousands of forms that I have saved in Microsoft Forms. So if there are certain ones that you go to regularly, ones that you want at the top of your priority list, going to pinned, you can see the ones that you've pinned. So let's say you haven't pinned one yet, but you want to. You can go into your recents, and this is going to show all of the ones that I've got. I'm going to see one that I don't think I have pinned. Clicking those three dots is what's going to give you that additional information. You can select Add to Pinned, and it's going to pull it over to your pinned. And that way you just have that quick access to it. If you find that I have the names of events that kind of recur. We've done a lot of Teams training, so sometimes when I just try to filter based on a specific team or forms or do forum, I get a number of results, and I would venture to guess that you probably have some that are recurring or replicated. So filtering doesn't always work best when you're searching for that form, but pinning it means it's going to appear at your top. When you no longer need it, when it's not one of those ones that needs to be on the forefront of your mind, you can just remove it from pinned so that you no longer have to see it on those main forms. But this is a great way to be able to kind of categorize that. So I'm going to jump back down. I'm going to make sure I'm just checking the chat to make sure we haven't lost anybody yet. Okay. Group down here, a great question. I see this, Dennis. These are teams. They just are grouping the forms based on the team it is associated with. So the groups here, these are all teams in Microsoft Teams that I'm a part of. So I'll go ahead and pull this up. This is Teams. I don't think it's sharing that. No, it's not. I'll pull it up in just a second. But these are just all teams in Microsoft Teams. So those are how they're categorized in those groups, because it assumes that as part of that group, you're going to want to share with the people that you work with on that particular team. Okay. You have to add a group to your form for it to go to the cloud. So that was a great question. So yes, you do want to make sure when you're sharing it that it's associated and backed up into a team so that you can have that in the cloud and be able to share that. So we're going to go over that in just a second. First, I want to drill back down to my groups, which is just all the forms that are saved in Teams. Okay, we're going to go and be able to show more. If you're ever missing a form, it is likely because it's just at the bottom. So just keep clicking show more and more, and then you can see just how many I have saved. But what I wanted to call attention, you can do the show more to keep saving. It's going to put at the top those forms that you most recently interacted with. Okay, so it's assuming that the ones that you interacted with recently are the most current, the ones you're going to need the most information on. You can delete a form if you no longer need it. You can select delete using those three dots to remove it. It just moves it to kind of your recycle bin in forms, which you can find once you go to your group. Your group is what they call it. You can go into deleted forms there. And so you can see these are ones that we were just testing or playing around with or duplicating, and they just kind of got moved to our trash can. So currently, because they're just in the trash, we can still take it out of the trash can and restore it. If we realize, oh, I deleted that, I need it back. To permanently delete it, you'd have to go to the trash can and then select delete again. So I want to point that out because we've had a few instances where people get nervous, they accidentally delete it and they think it's gone. It is still available. It's just available under that deleted forms trash can. You have to work extra hard if you really, really want it gone and you really want it eliminated. You'll have to work hard at getting that deleted folder cleared out. Okay. I'm going to go back to my forms. See, it's letting me know that I moved one. I'm going to go back to my forms here, And I'm just going to refresh to make sure anything I changed has effect. So let's go down here. I'm going to select all my forms. So that's going to pull up all the ones that I have created and am managing. And it shrinks down my viewpoint. So let me go ahead and zoom back in just a little bit so that you can see better. Hopefully that helps clear that up a little bit. It automatically zooms out because my forms are so big. So I went to all my forms and I really want a better way to organize them. If you haven't used this is going to be a great tool for just kind of cleaning up that mess that happens when you're creating a number of forms. When you create a form, even if you're creating it in a Teams meeting for polling purposes, it will show up in office.com under forms. That is the warehouse where everything goes afterwards. So you'll see here, these blue, teal colored ones are polling that I have done within a Teams meeting. So these are usually quick responses that happen during a meeting. And you can see that I've got a couple categorized here into a collection. So collection is where you can put any of those forms. It's just a bucket to hold it, kind of like a folder, like you would put documents in Word into a folder and store all of the corresponding documents in one place. This is Microsoft Forms version of a folder. So if you want to create a collection, a kind of a folder to store all of those, you can enter a new collection name there. I've got a couple drafted here just so that I could show you quickly. So you can see these are all polls. These blue ones are the ones I referenced. If you have a lot of them, which you can see that I do, you can simply drag and drop. And they are changing. It's just hard to see because they're all the same color. But you can drag and drop them into those collections. So that way, if you're looking for that specific data, you can just pop onto your collection so this is my collection on polls. From there, I can now sort down even a little bit better because I know that these are all polls. So from there, I'm able to see what I have in there. And kind of a fun thing about collections, I don't know about y'all, not all of my forms are necessarily in just one category. Sometimes it's more than one category. And in collections, you can put your forms in two places. So let's say I have a collection on forum and a collection on survey forms. I could put one form into both places so that down the road, when I go looking for that content, I would be able to see that and be able to open that up in either collection. And if you are in one, we'll go ahead and look at this is the one I have on forum. If you're in it and you decide, oh, this particular survey really needs to go to a different collection. When you click the three dots, it's going to show up, it's going to pull up all of the collections that you have available, whatever ones you create. I just happen to only have two because I'm not that organized. So for me, moving this from one collection to another would just be that one particular drop down. And if you decide that you no longer need it in that collection, you can also remove it. Okay, let me jump back here. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more because we have a good question. I want to make sure that you see this. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to start because I have a question on how do you create that collection. So from forms, from office.com and forms, if you scroll down the bottom right, it says all my forms because it needs to see everything you're working with. What are we cooking with here? What are we dealing with before we start organizing, right? It's like opening up your desk drawer. So when you go to that, it's only going to show the forms that you have ownership of. So if you notice, oh my gosh, I'm missing quite a lot, it could be because you're needing to share that as a team or share it with others. And so it may be because if you've created a form specifically in a Teams channel, it may not show. It needs to be shared. So right here is this new collection. That's where you would go to enter the name of whatever that collection is that you want. And after you view all your forms and you can see where they are, then you can drag and drop. I clicked too many times. Then you can just drag and drop and to sort however you want to set up that categorization. So I could set up as many collections as I wanted to and be able to dump them in there. So I did have a great question that can you make, when you're creating a poll, can you make it go directly to the collection? I'd have to test that to play around with it. I haven't tested doing the poll directly to have it sort, but there might be a way. So I would need to test that to check that out and be sure. Okay, so we showed drag and drop. And again, you can also filter by, if you can spell. If you can spell, then you're able to filter by the name of that. So these are all related to forum. These are already in a collection. How do I know that? Because when I scroll down, these are forms that I have that are uncategorized. So this is kind of your cheat sheet. You can look at and say, okay, do I want to move this? Yes, I want to move it to forum. And it's going to move any of these that I have not already sorted and moved into that collection. I can then just click those three dots, move to a collection, and move to forum. So it's pretty quick organization once you're able to maneuver those around. So those collections are a great way to help sort when you realize, if you saw how many forms I had, to be able to sort those and kind of organize them a little bit better. Okay, so I want to go, I'm looking to see if there was any additional questions. I don't see any right now, but as you're playing with it and kind of organizing, if a question comes up, you're certainly feel free to let us know. I want to move on to branching. Branching is something we didn't cover very much in some of our previous sessions, so I did want to just bring it up today. And I may have to reshare, but let me see if I can just copy this link. Perfect. Okay. I wanted to, before I show the branching, just so that we all know, there's two types of forms that you can create, form or quiz. What I'm about to talk about is going to delve more into the quiz role, but I have to do my PSA disclaimer for everybody. Just because it's a quiz, it doesn't mean that this is appropriate for grading. This isn't something that you would have as a classroom assessment where a student would get assigned a grade. This would be more for understanding somebody's knowledge, awareness, recognition of whatever it is that you're covering. If you're doing any type of content and you want to get that confirmation that what you're saying is understood, that's what this quiz would be for. And I'm going to show you an example of a quiz that was developed for elementary school, because I thought we could all kind of travel back in time and remember, learning how to view a clock, and that this was something that was easy to translate. So no matter what the information is, you can see how this branching tool can be used. So this one that I'm showing you is a quiz, not for a grade at UT Dallas, but just for a general assessment of, does somebody understand? This particular form was set up using branching. We didn't cover any really on branching in our last session. Branching will allow you to determine what response comes next. So you can see, hopefully we all know what time is shown on the clock. That's what the question's asking. But you can see underneath here, we have three choices. There's no other questions. So it looks like it's a single question, and that's because within branching, we designated it that if you get the right answer, it moves on to another question. If you get the wrong answer, okay, if you get the wrong answer, then you can see here that through branching, we were able to tell it, if they answer incorrectly, provide them with some extra guidance. I just see so many use cases for this, especially for compliance training, assessing, does your team understand its vision, its mission, some of the rules within the department. This would be a great way to get that general assessment of your team. So here we answered the wrong question. We're given information that was already put in to help guide us towards that correct answer. So now that we're here, we can try again, or we can move on. If this explanation is still just too complicated, I can't tell time, I can only use my Apple Watch, we can move on. But let's, for the sake of today, we're going to try again and see if we can get, I know it zooms in, so sorry, it's a really big 6 o'clock. Really big 6 o'clock, so you can see we answered correctly, and then it moves on. I'm going to zoom out just a little because it decided to go so big. It moves on to another question that's helping us to see how to tell time. So again, we can enter it incorrectly if we want to. It's going to give us some additional information to try to now re-guide and reiterate. This is exactly the same thing as kind of having that conditional logic, which I think is what other groups have kind of called this, depending on what type of form you use. Microsoft just calls it branching. So think of just literally that branch as we go off here, and then we can kind of divert depending on what someone's input is. It's going to provide a different output. So I wanted to just be able to cover that because I know that a lot of people have asked the question on quizzes and why we don't utilize those. And this is something that I've used with my students before and used in some of like the ambassador program. It's great to assess that. Did this session make sense? Did you understand? And then you're able to gather those responses and be able to review based on what those inputs were, what you might need to change. Okay. And I just got another great question. Is it possible to have the form report how much time a person spends on it? And yes, Microsoft Forms will do that. So let me see if I can pull up one here. Under the responses of your form, it's going to tell you at the top here, and I can zoom back in, jumping around on these a lot, so forgive me. But yes, you can see also what the response time is on a form. And I think that's really helpful because it's going to demonstrate to you the level of commitment that you're expecting for somebody to have within these forms as to how much information is being gathered. Are they struggling with being able to answer these? But anytime you have those responses in your forms, you're going to see that timing along with those responses. I did want to jump back here and just let me see if there's one I could pull up. This one. So this is a particular form that was shared on one of my teams in Microsoft Teams, which is helpful because then again, everybody can see it. One of the other benefits to this is that responses that we were just looking at. So if you'll notice here, when I click on the responses, this was just kind of a dummy form I threw up. We can see that average completion time. I can select Open in Excel. Now you'll notice that I opened it directly in Excel because this is going to be stored on the cloud, and there Sasha is there, he's with me there. So if we both needed to access it because we're both on that team, we can make edits and updates. So let's say, Sasha, that somebody else was trying to respond here and you knew that all of these results were the same, we could go in here and be able to kind of copy those down. And he could say he took one verbally. He could copy that down. It would be shared with me instantaneously because everything is backed on the cloud. You may have noticed some of your forms when you go in there that some of the forms that you have, when you click on the responses, it downloads a spreadsheet, right? Which is a stagnant time and place of those responses. It's pulling the data that you've received then, but because it's not backed up on the cloud, any responses that you get after pulling that report aren't going to be there. So this method, and I'll zoom in a little bit here, this method to me makes the most sense because I could be working simultaneously. And I've done this on a huge report that we had for one of our teams. We had about 500 entries. And I had one employee start at the top, one start at the bottom, and we ended up just coming to where we met in the middle after reviewing and assessing all of those results because we could see the little dots here displaying who's currently working on it and what they may do. If there was a certain response or I realized, oh gosh, we really need to follow up with this individual, I could highlight however many inputs that I wanted to and be able to tell my team, let's follow up with all of the yellow highlights. Let's recommunicate or reiterate whatever we need to do. And having this as that shared preview is going to allow all of us to be able to work on it and to be able to make those tweaks and edits right then and there. So just another perk of being able to have that. So thank you, Sasha, for jumping on there. I'm going to kind of come back here. I had another question that came up that, let's say you moved a form. So this is a form that I created for actually the Chamber of Commerce. It doesn't really fit with my team. I could remove it by selecting those 3 dots. That was a question of, okay, let's say I moved it to a team and then I realized, oh, wrong team, because we're all in so many of them. You're able to remove it from, hopefully I just did that, remove it from the team too, by deleting it from that team if you no longer want it there, if it's not applicable, or if it's expired or just kind of not useful anymore. Okay, I'm going to go through, I think, 2 more things, Brian, and then I'm going to pull you on to talk a little bit about Power Automate, because I know that's a huge one that a lot of people are here for. One of the things we like to highlight is how Microsoft synchronizes so well together. So if you haven't played with this yet, I'm going to just go, we'll start fresh here at office.com. I'm going to pull up just a totally blank Excel template. You might be thinking that this is going around creating a form a little bit backwards, and it kind of is. It's a different way to create it. By opening a new workbook, going to Excel, fresh new workbook, clean slate, right? Let me go ahead and I'll zoom in here. So let's say that I wanted to, from office.com, because I know that's all cloud-based, and I know that I can then create a document or file and share it with individuals so that they're getting this relevant information. So I went into office.com, and now I'm going to go to insert from my Excel document. I can go to insert, and I can select forms. I don't know if you've ever seen that before. It's very exciting. But I can select forms, and because this is a new document, it's not related to anything else, I can create a new form from Excel. So a reason that to do this would be if you already had other data, if you had different sheets at the bottom, if you already had other data, the form was relevant to some of the data that you're collecting, to the research that you're saving in Excel, you could create a new form here and be able to edit it, add any new questions that you have, and save it so that it'll be relevant. And I'm just putting in some blanks here just for the sake of our time. But you could add information here, and then you're going to see through the magic of Microsoft that it automatically updated this workbook in Excel, and it labeled it a new tab at the bottom here. And so this is now synchronized to my form. Anytime I get a response in here, it's going to update into this Excel workbook. So I can be able to get those updates and analytics instantly. And I can share that, right? I can share that with whoever I want to by just simply sharing it. And we can see that it's web-based, cloud-based. So all of those results can be instantly communicated. So that's a kind of a fun way to see how they work together. And I know sometimes if you already have information and you want it all in one place, you can have your forms go there by simply selecting it and creating any kind of a form. And you can edit it from here as well. It's just going to pull up that exact form that you synced to your workbook, and it's going to pull it up in there. Okay, the other one I wanted to show is one that I use a lot, which is OneNote. So if you don't already know, I thrive on OneNote, and you can also embed forms in OneNote. This is our planning document. We've got a tab here, particularly for Forum, to show all of the data that we're kind of collecting and referencing for Forum. But if I do have a forum registration, and if I wanted to make sure that that was included in my OneNote, I can embed it into OneNote as well. Same process as Excel by going to Insert and selecting the Forms icon. A little bit different in that this is pulling what you've already created. So you're going to see it's going to pull in the forms that you most recently created or edited, and the ones that you recently accessed, and it's going to have it on the side here. So I want to make sure that I don't let any of my team miss this opportunity. So I'm going to go ahead and insert forum, and it's going to take it just a second since I'm sharing and running this. It's mad at me. It is accepting responses. Let me try starting it one more time. Oh, I think it's because I pulled the old one. Let's try March, not November. Perfect. Okay, so I had this form already created. I wanted to make sure it was accessible via my OneNote. So I was able to embed it here. So people are previewing the actual form from OneNote. They're not having to go anywhere else. They're not having to take an additional step. This is great too, because OneNote, as we know, syncs with Teams, right? And so you can have a OneNote notebook dedicated to your team in Microsoft Teams, and this can get the information. So it's a one-stop shop. So for my team, they can come here, they can register, they can get the agenda, they can get the description, they can get the link to join, all of that information, one-stop shop. It just makes it a lot easier to make sure that everyone is literally on the same page. And we do have a OneNote training if you missed it. It is Lord of the Rings inspired. So if you like that, then you're going to love the OneNote training. And there's a lot of great information there on how to use OneNote and integrate it with the other Microsoft products. Okay. So let me stop sharing again for just a second because we're going to jump into Teams. Let's see, got it. Slowly, there we go. Okay, so we're going to jump into Teams because what would a session be if I didn't also show you how it's synchronized into Teams? Okay, so let me go ahead and pull up the one that I wanted to share. I've got, this is my marketing team. Here's my little testing channel where I get to do all the things. Y'all, if you haven't already done this, you're going to get really excited because I love this embedded look. It's exactly what we just saw in OneNote, but now we're going to see it here in this team as well. So if you have a form that you've created, you can select at the top, just like you would adding another file or adding any kind of an app. At the top of your Teams there, you can select what you want to add. So for us, because we're working with forms today, we're going to go ahead and add forms, and it's going to pull up a couple of options. We can create a brand new form that the whole team can edit. So campus communicators, I'm going to get you next. You're going to be on this in just a second. Or you can just add an existing form. So I'm going to go ahead and add an existing form. We'll go ahead and do this one, just one that I already had. You have the options from the existing form. If you want to collect new responses, new registrations, new feedback, new ideas. If you're only wanting to share results, you can embed a form and just let everybody see, like, look how many people registered, look what the feedback was. Or if you want to collaborate for them to have that edit access rights for changing those answers. For us, I'm just going to do collecting responses for right this second, and it's going to pull up the form. And as you can see, it is now embedded within that Teams channel. So for the users that are viewing this, you could either view it here as within the chat, right? It appears in the chat, or you can go to the top of the screen here and be able to see it, the whole form, all in one place. So you're not having to navigate outside because you're already authenticated in Teams. You're not having to add another layer of, do I log into this and authenticate there? It's all in one beautiful location. So, and two, if they were in the chat and opened it here, it's still going to open in Teams because you created it in Teams. So now I promised my campus communicators I was going to make them work today a little bit too. So I'm going to navigate there real quick, and then we'll move to Brian. So I'm going to do this under events. And let's see here. We'll go ahead and add a form in events. So we'll go ahead, if you are on the campus communicator team, check out events. It's going to show up for you in just a second. But I want you to be able to edit this with me. Maybe y'all can fix my spelling too. Okay, so this is a shared form that the team can edit and see the results. We're able to do this at once. And Stacia, I think we have too. If you're not part of the campus communicator team and you would like to be on the campus communicator team, this is a group that's open to anybody that wants information and wants to be able to have a conversation on some of the things that we're doing here. So I believe if you're on this, let's see. I'm just going to start randomly picking in questions. It's going to say, it's blurred there, but it should say add. So if I've set this up correctly, which is a big if, and I'm seeing names, I'm seeing little initials, so I think y'all are there, which is super exciting for me. But it should allow you to edit this as a group. So, oh, I'm seeing, look at the names coming up here. This is very exciting. You should all, hopefully, if I did it correctly, which again, there's 50-50 chance, but you should be able to enter information. I can't type. Okay. Wrong screen. I typed it somewhere. Information here, and be able to see some of these edits that are coming through. So I'm going to scroll through. So I see somebody, I did not just type that. Question, option 1, option 2, beautiful question, and putting a date. So as I'm here talking to you all, this team and Microsoft Teams is able to access it, help me fill out questions, help me determine what would be the best what would be the best thing to put in there. Y'all are gonna make me cry. And be able to just input it. As a group, we can collaborate on all of this information. And how beautiful, I'm gonna pop out of that, but how beautiful is it that right here in our conversation, I can just click on it and it's embedded in the conversation. It is part of our communication. It's part of our collaboration, and we all have access to it. So this really breaks down a lot of those barriers of having to work isolated on your own. You can have somebody help you create these, and you can collaborate on the spot to make it better, to input new ideas. But here it is. And so that's kind of a beautiful thing. So right now we've got edit, and we can pop it out too. If you kind of need a little more space, it's going to pop out. I don't know if that's going to show, not because I shared the wrong screen, but you can pop it out too if you need a little more space to work on it. So I'm going to go ahead. I know, Brian, I've talked way too much, but so many exciting things with what Forms is doing and what it can share. I'm going to stop kind of in the middle of this. If y'all are still, my campus communicators, y'all still rocking, creating. Oh, look, somebody did a little, nice. Yes, I love this. And so just the same way that we can edit it in Forms, you can edit it within Teams. But I'm going to stop. Brian, I know that in all of these processes, when we're creating something new and we're creating these different systems within Teams, sometimes it's easier just to automate things. That if we're doing a process over and over, it doesn't make sense for us to keep doing that over and over. So I wanted to talk and have you share a little bit about how you use Power Automate, specifically for help desk, for streamlining some of those processes that you find yourself doing as recurring events.
Yeah, absolutely, Amanda. I am happy to share a little bit about Power Automate. I think automation is the king in terms of speeding up just things that you can make a computer do to take off of your plate. So happy to show a little bit about just introduction Power Automate. I know we're not going to go in depth today, but just want to give a couple of examples of how we're using Power Automate at the help desk. So let me just going to confirm. Megdalite, can you see my screen? Okay, awesome, great. So a couple of examples we're using here. I will actually start with this one. So Power Automate is really an if this then that type of setup. That really allows you to set up triggers that then set up specific actions. So you can see in this case, the trigger is when a new email arrives, and this happens to be a report that I'm getting on a daily basis out of our new Atlas system. If you missed Atlas, one of my staff, Jake Scheller, talked about that a couple of tech tips back. And then it posts this in Teams. So how many of you get too many emails? I know I do. This allows us to post in a Teams channel when a specific email comes in that meets the criteria that's listed here. So very simple, easy to set up here. You can see that I can quickly edit if I wanted to change this. It's actually inserting the body of the message right here inside of the message it's posting inside of our help desk team. So that's my first example. The second one that I want to show is our recurring reminders. So if you have student employees or really any employees, you might be reminding folks to get their timesheets submitted so that you can get them approved as a supervisor. We definitely have this challenge at the help desk. And so we have this set up to post on a recurring basis inside of Teams. You can see that every month at a specific date, it's actually posting an announcement inside of our Teams channel. And this is a really, really simple one inside of Power Automate that makes it much easier. I will also mention there are a variety of templates that are available for Power Automate. You can see quite a few of them here. And even if you search for, as we're talking about Microsoft Forms today, you can see there's a variety of templates that already exist that help you kind of get started with Power Automate if you're new to the platform and be able to automate, kind of simple tasks that normally might take more time and more administrative time. But in the interest of time, I'm going to wrap up showing just one last form-related Power Automate flow, as they're called. And you'll see here that this is our technology bar closing checklist. So we have a checklist of items that get completed at opening. And then we, of course, have a set that are completed at closing when we wrap things up in the student union. And you'll see here that I've got a form that's being submitted. This is the internal ID for that technology bar checklist that our students complete. And then it's actually getting the response information. How did they respond to the questions? And then it's posting that inside of our technology bar channel inside of the help desk team. So you can see we're asking if we've got our digital signage turned off, is the card access working in the building, is the technology bar clean? We're asking those simple questions, and that's actually posting to Teams. Again, I'm a big fan of let's get rid of as much email as I can get rid of out of my inbox. And so this allows us to keep an eye on what's happening at the technology bar and get those updates without having to get additional email. We can just see it inside of Microsoft Teams. So I think with that, Amanda, I'm going to turn it back to you to show another example of a Power Automate flow that you use heavily on your team and for technology tips. Amanda, I think you are still muted.
My Teams, of course, froze like the second that you cued me on, and I was clicking the unmute, and it was like, no, not right now. Okay, so perfect. So not a dumb question. We just got a great question. We talked about Power Automate, but I didn't show you where. So let me go ahead and show you where and how to get to that, because it is a little confusing and it is new. And I think today's session is going to be more of a precursor to a little bit more in-depth use of Power Automate, because it is a complicated system. It is a no-code option, but you kind of need to know code, even though it's no code, right? You need to know a little bit, you need to know how to process a flow. You need to know how you want to structure it to pull from what form, Outlook, Teams, whatever that is. You need to know what you want it to pull from so that you can tell it what to do. So like everything, our magic trick is always office.com, always office.com. And from there, you should be able to see Power Automate. It's the blue arrow icon. So that's how you navigate there. I'm going to go ahead and just high level show you a flow. Full disclosure, my hope was to be able to share it with you today, but because this is custom built for my business needs, it's also connected to my business needs account, such as my Outlook, my OneDrive, my SharePoint, my Forms. And for us to edit this flow and to be able to just send it out would mean completely breaking it and dismantling it and then making you redo it. So I'm going to show it to you very high level, and then I'm going to put it to you to determine what you need it for, and then look at the templates that are here. I'm highlighting them now. Brian mentioned that where the templates are, they have a number that are pre-built, and you can search for those templates depending on what your business needs are. You can search there and find what you might want assistance with. So my particular flow came about needing, we have these live events. When you register on Microsoft Forms, which is what we were talking about today, it does not send you a ICS request. It does not auto-generate and put something on your calendar the moment after you register. So to work around that process and that problem that was created for me, we created a flow. And again, I'll show you high level, but it's recommended that for you, you'd want to build a template that whatever your unique needs are. So in this flow, so I just clicked on one that we already kind of started on a little bit, and I'm going to go into edit. So this is one I named, but I have not filled out all of the information. What it's doing is it's pulling anytime a new response comes from a particular form, it's pulling those, it's going to pull those details, and I'm telling it what time of the event starts, what time it ends. I'm telling it the name of my event and giving it a little description. Also including location, although it's just Teams Live, so the location is just online. But then it also generates that ICS calendar request. So it's pulling these various inputs, okay, so that it can create that ICS request for us. So it's creating that file, and then it's going to send an email. What starts the trigger action that starts this is syncing it to that form in Microsoft Forms. So these are all different actions that you can kind of submit, and then you can select them, like Brian was showing you kind of behind the curtain there. You can select them and pull in your different form ID here so that you can select which form are you wanting it to pull from. So I'm going to scroll real fast and get down to, oh, it may not be shared with me, so I might not be able to pull it, but we'll just pull a random one for now. But you select what form you want it to pull from, and then where it's going to be getting all of the responses. So it's pulling from that form and pulling the responses from that form, if that makes sense. So here is where I input all of that information, and I'm happy to take a screenshot of this if that's helpful if you're trying to pull in these trigger actions. In our survey today, when we conclude here in just a few minutes, we have capacity to help if you've created a flow, if you've used a template and something doesn't work perfectly, we can help troubleshoot what might be going wrong after you've built it. But we don't have the capacity to build templates and build flows for all the business and use cases on campus. But in our survey, we're going to have an option there too, so that if you need more information after you've created it, you can book a one-on-one consultation with a Microsoft 365 staff member if there's something broken in your flow. So once you've had a chance to kind of play with it, tweak it a little bit, and there's something that's broken, we'll look at that for you. But anyways, once you input, I'm just going to drill down. This is where you'd input the start and end time. You can see here the description. This is what gets emailed out to y'all after you register. So I can put it kind of in the body of an email and be able to send you that information. And finally, the actual email that gets sent out. So these are just those trigger actions here. Anytime you make an update, you would click save. You can check to make sure once you've pulled in these actions, you can check to make sure that it runs correctly. And then you can even test it to see if it's going to generate that ICS request. I did find something today that's a bit easier, so I have to conclude with this one last thing to be able to show you. And let me just reshare so that I can share my teams here. I feel like this syncs with Power Automate. I feel like it's a lot easier. So I'm going to jump back on my campus communicators here. And we're going to go in just like I created that form a moment ago, but there's an option now to create a recurring survey. When you click on that, it has a couple automated suggestions. You're welcome to use one of those templates because you can select any and then change it. So the ICS request is just that little calendar, I got a question in the chat, sorry, squirrel, is that little calendar attachment that goes on the email that saves it on your calendar. That's all the ICS request is. But in forms, you can pick any of these recurring forms here, select it. This is just a general one that's auto-created, student well-being. That's one we kind of played with. So you can go to next steps. Here is where if you don't like the questions that it has, you can click on that. It'll pop up in a different browser. You can change the questions, okay? So you can change these questions and it is still going to show up and can be set up on a reoccurrence. Navigating forward to next step, you can see here how Forms is connecting to a reminder in Teams. So you can adjust that frequency of how often that you want it to send out. You can select that particular team and channel that will receive this regular survey or regular feedback. So this is a little bit of a cheat, I think, to kind of help accomplish some of those things that Brian shared too. You could create a form and set that customization, and this is synced to Power Automate, and you change how frequently. So the timesheet one that Brian showed, that reminders of who needs to submit their timesheet when, this would be a great way to kind of circumnavigate creating it all on your own and just editing a template that's available for you. And it gives you the step-by-step of how to do that. So then you can just go through and finalize. It's just letting you know how to check your results, which is the same way you normally do in Forms. You get those real-time results and you can get them in Excel. So here, and don't worry, campus communicators, I'll delete it if you're in that, but here you can see that this was set up, and it was set up as this is a check-in. So if you do need a check-in with your team and just make sure on at least a routine basis, if you need to remind them once a month about submitting time, anything like that, go in and change the form to meet your needs so that you can have this process automated for you, and it really will simplify and streamline that work. So I'll go ahead, I'm going to stop sharing Megslide. If we have that final slide, we can go ahead and pull that up because I know we are like spot on out of time. Thank you all for attending. I know this was a lot of information all at once. Forms has grown and transformed so much from when we first started using it and from when we were playing around with it. So I wanted you all to see those changes that have kind of come about and how you can now use it and navigate with it. So I'll go ahead and share. There we go, got the survey. If you want to give us some feedback on today's session, and if you want to get that link to have the one-on-one consultation once you've developed a flow, just to make sure that things are working right, in the survey, one of the questions has that link available to you so you can contact that individual. So thank you all for joining. We'll go ahead and leave that survey up for just a couple moments in case you do have any feedback that you'd like to provide.